Welcome. My name is Sara Schaefer. We live in hell. Let's craft through it. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello, welcome back. I hope you had a great week. My week was pretty good. There were some bumps along the road though. So we had to take our cat to the vet. Now, this is the first time I've taken a pet that was mine as an adult to the vet. So I didn't anticipate the emotions and the cuteness of a little cat being vulnerable like that. So long story short, our cat came to us, chose us, I guess, about a year ago, and she just sort of showed up on our porch and wouldn't leave. And we tried to find because we could tell she was like very friendly and wanted to come inside and, not afraid of people at all. She seemed like she was loved, potentially. So we went online, we walked around the neighborhood, we took her to see if she was chipped, and no, she was not. And we didn't feed her anything for like a week because we were like, we want you to go back. And she just wouldn't leave, and it was so sad. And even when it was raining we thought we were, and then it kind of came to like, okay, we either need to take her to a rescue or we need to start taking care of this cat. And so by this point we had started, we were like, okay, well, while we're still trying to figure it out, let's just start feeding her because we don't want to be cruel. So we start feeding her and then we fall in love. And now her name is Porchy because that's where she loves to be. And it's where she wouldn't leave when she found us. Cut to like 3 months later, 4 months, 5 months later, much later. One morning, I look out the window and I see a woman in my backyard holding Porchy like up like this. And I'm like, oh no, what's happening? So I go out and I'm like, hello? Like she's far back in my backyard. And I'm like, hello? And she's like, oh, this is my cat. And my heart just sank. And I was like, oh no, we're going to lose Porchy now. But pause really quick. I just want to say she's a very happy being outdoors. She's like a mainly outdoor cat, but we do bring her in. It took a while to get to this because I'm not a cat person. I have cat baggage, I would say, because of past situations that I will not share publicly because I don't want to embarrass or, talk shit about people from my life, but from the past. But I had a bad taste in my mouth about cats, and had never really bonded with one, and just whatever. So I'm a little bit allergic to them, so I was very reluctant. And also the whole point of not the point, but like a whole part of the deal of leaving LA and living somewhere where you could afford a better life and have more space was I really want to get a dog. And so I was like, Scott, I swear to God, if this means we don't get a dog because we've got this other pet now, and this wasn't my vision, and I'm like resisting it, and we talk it through. But I'm like starting to really like this cat. She's so sweet and so chill, and she's not like any other cat I've ever been around. And Scott, like, I can tell he loves her. So anyway, so this is the point where we're starting to like be like, okay, she's ours. We're like making arrangements on like how she's gonna, cause I was like, she can't come inside, but then we would let her inside, and it was starting to get cold at this point. It was like winter now, and I was like, we can't leave her. We have like a little hut for her and like a little warm bed, and she would go in there and sleep in there, and it was very sweet. But then like she just would want to come inside, and so I gave in. I gave in. I started taking an allergy pill and I keep the house as clean as possible. I vacuum and I keep her, but she doesn't really get up on our furniture. She spends even in the winter, she would spend most of her time outside. She loves being out there. And we looked up, like, is it ethical to have an outdoor cat? Is it, what's better for them? And, in the end, I think we just decided to, like, let Porchy tell us what she needs and wants in a way. And I think she's very happy where she is. So anyway, I know you're like, go back to the lady who said it was her cat. What happened? So I see this woman and I don't know, she looks like she's maybe around my age. And she's like, this is my cat. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, oh. I'm like trying to remain neutral. Oh. And she's like, oh, I live right back here. So she's like live like right behind us. I'm like, okay. I'm so confused. And she's like, I was gone for like 4 months. I was living out of a van in Reno. I'm a deadhead, and then she just starts talking and I can't get a word in. She's very nice, but she was just talking and talking. Oh, and she doesn't really, her name, I call her Maggie. What do you call her? And I was like, Porchy. And she was like, Porky. And I was like, Porchy. And like, she's like, just keeps on talking. She's like, well, do you want her? And I was like, before I could say anything, she just keeps talking. So I'm like, I think she doesn't care. And I think maybe she doesn't live here anymore. And she's just going on. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, I don't know what just happened. And we were like, get Porchy inside. We're like, we have to make sure she doesn't leave us. And it was fine. And then we've interacted with the neighbors a couple other times. And they know we have her. Nobody cares. I think the woman I spoke to like just doesn't live there anymore. And the woman who owns the house is like maybe her sister and her mom. I don't know. There's lots of different people coming and going at that house, and they seem perfectly nice. It's just like a lot of talking, and but anyway, so Porchy's our cat. So I had been saying for a few months, like, we need to take her to the vet. We need to make sure she's up to date on vaccines. Like, the neighbor said that she was about 6 years old. And so clearly, I think, and I didn't even get a word in to be like, is she spayed? But we assume she is because she's not acting like a cat in heat ever, or she's, she never gave birth to babies in the past year. And there's a lot of neighborhood cats around. So so we assume she's spayed. But we're like, we should get her checked out. So, and then it kind of got accelerated because we noticed she was like having a little bit of pain and going like when she would like chew on something, maybe some mouth pain. And she just was acting a little lethargic. So we took her to the vet, and I just didn't anticipate. I didn't know what she was going to be like, because I know cats can be like really crazy. And she doesn't like, when she doesn't want you touching her, holding her, she's just like any other cat. She lets you know. And if you, she's like, she doesn't like scratch or bite very much. She's never done that to me. She's actually very sweet, like I said, but I didn't know how she was going to be at the vet. So we take her, and she couldn't have been calmer. She's like, they're weighing her on the little scale, and she's just like she's not even trying to move. They're picking her up, and she's just like looking around. You can tell she's scared, but she's not like fighting it, and it's just so sweet. And then they like take her little heart rate, and they're like, wow, she's got a really low heart rate, like really slow. Like, that's unusual. Let me try it again. Okay, well, maybe she's just very chill. I mean, she is obviously very calm, but we're going to do some blood work and we'll see if there's anything else going on. But yeah, so we get all the blood work done and vaccines and stuff, and everything came back normal, except she does have a UTI because she's a slut, but they had the mouth thing. They said she might have this thing that, you got to get it taken care of if it is, but the only way to find out is to put her under anesthesia, and then it becomes a whole dental procedure, and you do it all at once, and that is gonna cost like $2,000 or something. And I'm like, I don't know. And I know that people are like, welcome to being a pet owner. The vet tells you they need something, and you're like, do they? Anyway, we're probably going to get it done, but Scott is going to do some research and just make sure like we're not being bamboozled. But anyway, it was she's on antibiotics, and she's just being very sweet. And So that's the story of how I got a cat. I still want a dog, and that's something I'm working towards, because it's all on me to like ask the landlords. It was something that was left open-ended when we moved in, and then it's like, you know, Scott and I are very specific on what we want in a dog. We want like a little dog that doesn't shed, and we had our neighbors had a dog that we were like in love with back in LA, and we kind of want that exact kind of dog, like a little Bichon, like a little white curly guy. But when you're really specific on what you want, it makes like going through the whole rescue dog thing kind of like, you want what you want, but you might not be able to get like exactly what you want with the rescuing animal thing. So we're just starting to look into all that now. So we'll see what we end up with. Okay, let's just go to the craft. Okay, so this is a project I've actually been thinking about doing for a year, and I finally started working on it in June. And this is the craft we're going to do today is we're going to make a miniature bookshelf with books to go on it, and I'm very excited about that. But it's part of a larger project that I'm doing, where I took apart my big sister Christy's childhood dollhouse, which then had been passed down to my niece Jana, and nobody wanted it anymore, and it was just sitting in my house for a while, like kind of in the way. And I was like, well, I have a plan for it. I'm going to convert this dollhouse and use pieces from it to recreate and upcycle it, or transition it into a little cabinet, like a little hutch in the entryway. And it will maintain the memories and the nostalgia of this piece, but it will be functional now and it have a place, like a real place. And I thought, well, why not kick it up a notch? So what I'm doing is using pieces from the dollhouse, the outer facing part, to create these cabinet doors. Now this is actually a piece of the floor. I have it marked so I know which side it goes on. This is going to be a cabinet door that opens, okay? And on the inside I have the original like wall and window, and then I'm going to put, like, I don't have them with me right now, but a window from the original dollhouse, the shutters, and like a trim that I created. And it will be in the original colors from the dollhouse, and then it'll open. But I decided, wouldn't it be so cool if through the window you could see a little scene that's like lit up, like a little room, okay? And when you open it, you can see into the room. And yes, that takes up some storage space, but it also is just this whimsical little thing that adds delight and nostalgia to your piece. And this is something I've been wanting to do more of, where I take potentially people's old dollhouses. Honestly, it's an idea that a friend told me that I should start looking into as a business, which is like me. I don't want to give away an idea, but also whatever. And other people do this, and I'm sure it doesn't really matter if other people take this idea, but I'm trying to get going with this so that I can at least make a stamp as someone who might do this, where I take old nostalgic things, and this is something I've been doing for years, like from your memories from your family, an old dollhouse. It's not practical to have, it's something you like and it's cute, but like they're huge. Dollhouses are the size of a piece of furniture, and it's like when you don't have much space, or it's not functional, it's like, why would I have this in here? And it's like clunky. So I've had this idea of like turning old pieces of stuff and transforming it into a new functional piece that you can have in your home, that then you can say, oh, that's actually made out of this old thing that was mine growing up, or was my grandfather's or something. So I've been really wanting to like work on that as an idea. So this is my first big project. I got permission from my family to like tear apart the dollhouse first, and I'm just going to see how it goes. I've never done anything like this. I'm not a furniture builder per se. I'm using, something already made, like anyway, I'll show the whole process of that when it's done. But for today, we're just going to work on part of it, which is building this little bookshelf for this little room. Now I decided, because it's so small, because I didn't want to take up too much space inside the cabinet door, that this is going to be like a reading room, like a little reading nook. And there'll be a bookshelf and a little chair and some other decor in here, and then you'll be able to look through and see it. I am using pieces from this is trim from around all the windows and doors. and I turned it into, I was like, oh, that could be like a wood siding, a wood paneled room. And so I reused that. This is the original wallpaper. So this dollhouse was from like the 70s. So it's pretty old at this point. And the wood is a little tired. But so I've had to like supplement it with like new pieces of wood and things. This floor, I'm not really happy with how it turned out. I just did like a quick and dirty, you know, faux wood paneled floor or wood finish. I might cover it. I might redo it. I might just put, you know, a rug there and you don't really see it and you just see the edges. And so that might be fine. So that's a maybe change later thing. But for now, I'm going to work on the bookshelf. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to make this bookshelf. And this is based on a style of furniture from the 80s, very popular. It still exists today. You can still buy new furniture like this, but it was very popular in the 80s, especially around Virginia parts because the company was based here. And you see this furniture a lot on Facebook Marketplace. And in fact, Scott and I have furnished huge portions, like our kitchen table, all the kitchen chairs, upstairs are a couch, desk, shelving, a cabinet, little hutch thing is this style of furniture. It's solid wood. I want to say pine. It's called like crate design, and it's like, looks like very boxy. You might recognize, I'm working on a chair. And they use like slats of wood, lumber, and they create these like segments to create very simply designed furniture. And it just has that 80s look. I had this stuff growing up and it's very nostalgic. And so I started working on the chair and I thought, why not just go ahead and make the bookshelf too? I have this furniture so I can look at it, I can measure, I can see how it's made, and I can really recreate something in miniature that's similar. So the basic concept, I'll maybe cut to a photo of like the life size here or video of some of the stuff we have or maybe online. So you'll know what I'm talking about when you see that. So the basic concept to make this in miniature is to create all this little lumber that you're going to use to create and piece together. It's almost like a jigsaw puzzle, which is probably why I like it. It's very Tetris-y, this process, finding it very satisfying. So what you're going to do is create like little pieces of lumber, okay? And this is all about, there's a lot of math involved in this, but don't worry, maybe I'll sell a pattern so that you can, if you want to make this on your own and actually make it kind of flexible where like now you can make the other pieces of furniture, maybe I'll just sell that as a digital download because I think that would be, or just make it free, whatever. Because it would prevent you from having to do all the math. But if you're curious, as I've mentioned before, 1/12 scale is very easy to understand conceptually. 1 foot, let's visualize it. 1 foot in, I call it real life. 1 foot in real life is 1 inch in miniature. That's 1/12. So let's say your bookshelf is 6 feet tall. That means in miniature, it's 6 inches tall. Now that's really simple. That's a very simple conversion. But when you get down to the details and the granular, then it starts to get kind of crazy because you're dividing fractions or decimals and it can get kind of crazy. There's different ways to make it simpler for you. Once you get into it though, it's almost like a secondhand thing. And I mean, I may not remember exactly. Like I know that 1 inch in real life is 0.083333 inches in miniature, which that's crazy that I know that, but I just do because of doing this for so long. There's different ways to make it easier for yourself. You can use graph paper that is the proper scale, although this graph paper is 10 squares across for 1 inch, so it's tenths of an inch, which I find easier when you're working with decimals and you're using a calculator. So like if you're measuring something that you know needs to be 0.45 inches wide, you're not messing with the fraction of 16ths, 8ths, 4ths, which is what is on your standard ruler. Why we have this measuring system is beyond me. I always think of the Nate Bargatze SNL sketch where he's George Washington talking about the standard measuring system versus metric. Like Such a good sketch. It's like one of my favorites of all time. So anyway, so if you want to make it easier where you're just working with a calculator, get yourself a 1/10 inch ruler. So what it does is it divides your inch into tenths as opposed to your classic 1/16, 1/4, 1/8, all that crap. That way, if you divide something with a calculator and it says like 4.3, you can just eyeball it, you know, for about 3, you know, like it does make it easier. And this graph paper is the same. So sometimes I just work with tenths, but then sometimes, you know, like, so for instance, I did the math, and the wood that is used in this furniture, the width of it is 3/4 of an inch planks. And when you divide that by 12 in your 1/12 scale, that ends up as exactly 1/16, which is a handy number. I'm losing a lot of you at this point. I understand that. But the nerds are still here. The douchebags are gone. It's our time now, okay? So 1/16 of an inch thick. The handy part of that is that they sell a lot of craft wood that is 1/16 inch thick. In fact, guess what else is 1/16 inch thick? Popsicle sticks. They are also the exact width of one of the plank sizes we're going to use. So popsicle sticks are actually a great source of wood for this project that is very affordable. But I am on a new supply embargo. I am not allowed. This is a self-imposed embargo. I'm not allowed to buy new craft supplies right now. I have too many. I went crazy during the Joann's liquidation sale. I've been entering all my supplies into a spreadsheet and doing like cost breakdowns so I can start being more of a serious businesswoman. I'm like reading like bookkeeping for dummies and stuff. And it's been determined by myself, my financial manager, me, and my accountant, me, that I need to stop buying craft and art supplies and start using what I have. So I'm creating planks of wood out of wood that I have. I have a lot of scrap wood, but if you're going to go out and buy wood, you can get some popsicle sticks. You can get the thick ones, and you can cut these down. You can also just get a big old sheet of 1/16 inch thick basswood. They sell those at all the craft stores. You can get strip wood that's this thick. You can kind of eyeball it. The great thing about 1/16 inch thick basswood, I don't know how it's pronounced, is it's very easy to cut. Very easy. Thicker wood gets a little harder, but you can do it. But it's very easy to cut with an X-Acto knife. So back to what I was saying. This 1/16 inch thick wood, sometimes then when you're creating other measurements, can throw you back into the standard, you know, 1/4, 1/16, 1/8, and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of move between both. Don't overthink what I'm telling you now. I think I am, because it just would make it so much easier. I am going to put the measurements together for you that you can reference, because you're not going to be able to keep up with this shit in the video, because I can already tell it's not going to make sense, and we're going to start, like, numbers are going to start floating in front of my face. It's just not going to be good. So anyway, I did a rough sketch of how the shelf is made, and I will cut maybe back to the picture to show you, because my sketch is not great, but it's basically like a similar concept to this, okay? And it creates these panels, and I'm just gonna piece it together and go. I'm gonna use, like, I loved going upstairs and measuring and looking, and once I got the concept, I was like, I could make this. So we're gonna get to it. So basically, in this style of crate furniture, I'm gonna leave this here so that I can have my measurements. In this style of crate furniture, there are like, I've noticed there's two main sizes of planks. I'm just calling them planks. So you got your 1/16 inch thick. Don't worry about any other measurement. All the wood we're working with is that thick, okay? But width, okay? You're gonna create planks that are, so in the real, let's talk about the life size. 3.5 inch wide and 5.5. So I'm calling it skinny and wide planks. They basically go back and forth between these two size planks in all the furniture they make. So the skinny is about, I'm using decimals on this because it's just easier than fractions. Who knew I'd be using this much fucking math? I actually did kind of like math. The concepts of it, I just didn't find it very interesting. But I've found a way to use it in my actual work, so it's kind of cool. So yeah, the skinny plank is about 0.3-ish, 33 point, like a third of an inch. So 0.33 something of an inch. So I just go measure like just a little bit over 0.3 of an inch wide. And I create these planks. I'll show you how I cut them in a minute. And so those are my skinny planks, all right? And I've already made a bunch, my skinny planks. Now the wide planks I don't have because they're spoken for right now, but I'm gonna have to make more. So let's actually do that right now. I'll get to that part. I've already started making this so that it wouldn't take so fucking long. All right, so I'll show you how I make a plank. So let's take, this is actually balsa wood, which is even softer. Hold on, I just picked out some spare wood. Oh, I'll show you how I use an actual, one of these thick tongue depressors. I hated that growing up when they'd be like, stick out your tongue and they do this. Do they still do that to kids? I don't know. I think this is just a chunky popsicle stick, but I know it's got other titles, medical uses. So I'll show you actually how I cut this down to be the width I want. So if you're going to use these, or you could have a big sheet of wood, which I'll tell you about these in a second, but whatever wood you're using, you get a sharp blade on your X-Acto knife. That's going to majorly help. And then I just measure across. So my thick ones are 0.4. Wait, what are they? I need to look at my actual. I need to actually do the correct. It's a lot. You'll see I erase, I cross out, I figure out like, oh God, what am I doing? Okay. 0.45 inches wide. 0.45 inches wide. So I use the tenths to an inch here because it's just easier. 1, 2, 3, 4 tenths and a half. And I'm going to make a little mark. And I do it a couple times down the wood. You can go all the way to the top, but it's rounded. So I just skip that part. So that way, if I've made a mistake, it's obvious. And I can line up my ruler. So I put a ruler down. This kind is good because it has this cork which kind of holds it, keeps it from slipping. And I'm just going to line up against my little pencil marks. And then this is a little bit tricky because it's not totally even. So just be careful. Do not cut your finger. I'm not going to cut mine. It's going to look like I'm going to cut it. The key to cutting wood with an X-Acto knife is you score. Remember, and even foam core, you're scoring first. Okay, keep that in mind. You're not trying to cut through on the first pass because that's going to make you shift and it's not going to cut straight. Right now, we're just making a light line, a light little cut, a light mark, scoring. All right, so that way I can get really straight. I'm not worrying about strength right now. I'm just doing detail, so that helps. And I'm holding it down and I'm going against the ruler. And that keeps me, and I usually do a couple while I've got a good grip. And then it gives me like a groove to really cut in. And then look how straight that is. Like that's perfect. Okay, so this is the thicker width. I'm gonna cut off these rounded edges, but that gives you an idea. So I need a few more of these. So I'm just gonna cut a few here and then I'll show you how I stain the wood, all right? So I'll probably speed this part up. Okay, so now I've got more of these made. Now, how do I stain them? Okay, so there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You could actually stain your wood for real, but that is smelly. It sometimes doesn't dry properly if you're in a humid environment. You take it outside and da-da-da-da. And it's a pain in the ass. Some people use wood dye. People do that in dollhouse projects for like shingles, like a large bulk, small pieces of wood that would be just impossible to, not impossible, it would just take forever if you were to paint them individually. So I've done that before when I was putting shingles on a dollhouse. You basically drop everything, all these little, you know, hundreds and hundreds of little pieces of wood into a bucket of wood, you know, brown dye water or whatever, and then you mix that up, and you have to, like, it's a whole process. So that's a whole other thing. If I was doing a ton of these, maybe I would do it that way. But this way is a fast way to make a wood stain look. And I do recommend painting your planks of wood, use paint, individually, because one of the great things about this style of furniture is the slight variations in each plank. Okay, so you can see that here, how that looks really cool. Like, it looks real, a real miniature wood stain. So that's why I do it individually. If I was to paint this afterwards, it wouldn't maintain that variation, and I just don't think it would look as good. And when you try to paint over glue, it is discolored and it doesn't look right. And the wood doesn't absorb the stain or paint. So I say, if you're staining or painting or doing anything with the wood and it's not just natural, do it before you glue it. Do it before you glue it, okay? That's today's motto. Do it before you glue it. It might seem like it's going to take a little bit longer, but trust me, unless you're like the master of gluing where you get no glue anywhere on the edges, which I think you'd have to be such an expert. You would have to have such crazy levels of detail. You're going to want to paint it. If it's supposed to look like wood stain, you're going to want to do that before you glue it. All right, so here's how I get that wood stain look. I've got my paint. If you're doing a longer project, I know this might seem obvious, but I can't tell you how many times I've wasted paint and then I come back and I forget about it and it's dried. And it was like a unique color that I mixed, and then I have to try and match that. So if you're using a color that you've mixed up for a project that you're taking a long time to work on and you're taking breaks and you're gonna need it later for touch-ups or whatever, always put some foil on it or put it in a jar so that it doesn't dry out and you get to keep using that shade. Okay. And if it's a big project, just make sure you make a lot of the paint if you're mixing an original color. So what I do is, let me actually get this. Okay, so to make this like stained look, I take a wet paintbrush, not super wet, and then I dip it in my paint. And then I dip back just the edge in a little bit of water. And so now it's really wet and drippy. So just be careful when you're doing this on something. And I just soak in and brush it on the wood, okay? So it sort of has more of that thinness that wood stain does. And then I take a paper towel, similar to how you do wood stain, or, you know, cloth, and I rub it off. And now it gets more of that wood grain is showing through. And you can go lighter and darker depending, and I would vary it up a little. Make sure you do some pieces darker than others, so that to make it darker, you just add maybe less water and more paint, okay? Or maybe go over it twice or whatever. But this goes fast because you watered it down. It goes on really smoothly and quickly. And then I wipe it off. And maybe I don't go as hard wiping to get a darker look and get your blotches off and stuff. So see how there's some variation there. And I just really like that look because it does look like the real thing when you do it like that. All right, so, and you could also do this technique if you were gonna make your own little hardwood floor for a miniature scene, same concept. And you could use it with popsicle sticks. I've actually done that before for a wood floor. So you could do this same concept to get that variation. It does look really good. A little bit time consuming, but worth it in the end, I think. I mixed a little bit of black into regular brown just to make it darker than the rest. There's a lot of wood in this little room, but that's the style of like 70s and 80s, you know, basement, You know what I'm talking about? That's what Scott and I, we're not even close to being able to buy a house, but we're closer than we were when we lived in LA. And we've kind of been looking around, like what do houses cost around here? What would we want? How much money will we need? It's good to go start vision boarding it and planning. We really love, there's a lot of houses around here that are older, like your classic split level suburban style homes, and with the wood panel, and a lot of them have done horrible flips. You know what I'm talking about, where it's just like everything is white, light gray, like, you know what I'm talking about. And they've either removed the wood paneling or they've painted over it white, and it's just like an abomination. Like, I like old, you know, classic stuff. There's actually this Instagram account I'm following. I don't think it's called this, but I don't know what the name of it is, but they are unflipping their house. Like, they bought a house and it had all these, you know, really cheap flippy updates, and now they're unflipping it to get it back to its like mid-century glory. And I'm totally, and with the color, like so much more color and warmth, like all the like coldness of, I would call it Joanne Gaines, like you know, modern farmhouse. I loved modern farmhouse style when it first came out. I loved Joanne Gaines when it first came out, but now it's just too much. It's everywhere, and it's, I don't know. I just don't like it. So, and even Joanne's, I can tell Joanne Gaines, she's keeping up with the style. Like, when you go and look at her little section in Target, it's changing to be more of these deeper, like forest colors, warmer wood. And God, if I see one more in these houses that I'm looking at online on Zillow, barn door where there shouldn't be one, you know, those sliding barn doors. Like, why is this in a house that was built in 1985? Like, it doesn't make sense, and it looks like shit. Anyway, I've always thought the barn door thing, I never was a fan of that. Maybe the first time I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It looks unique. It's like rustic. They're so impractical. They're stupid looking. And they take up so much space. You have to like slide it over anyway. So while that dries, which by the way, this technique, the wood dries so fast. Like, it'll be dry within a few minutes. So that's to get back on track, this size is my thicker. I've got my skinny planks and my thick. You see the difference in that width? Most of this furniture is made with these two sizes. All right. So you're going to need a bunch of both. All right. For the bookshelf, however, there is a third width, which is the shelf itself is one wide 12-inch plank. So I did cut some 12-inch and prep that as well for my shelves. So let's actually get to assembling it. I have already started the back of the shelf. So this is the back panel wall of the bookshelf. This tool that I'm using, you're probably immediately like, what is that? This is a magnetic jig, and it's really handy for small craft projects where you require a nice and straight edge, square angles, and you can use magnets. You see, I laid down my wood. I had glue between each slat, and you lay down magnets and it creates pressure, because as I've said many times, glue without pressure is like no glue at all. And then you can really just let that dry for as long as you need. And I find when I'm making miniature furniture, even though it takes longer, letting the glue dry for as long as I can is very helpful, because this is little tiny pieces of wood and I'm using just a basic craft glue. This is my favorite because it has a precision tip. This is kind of thin too, so it makes it really easy to apply small amounts on little projects. But it's not as strong as, say, wood glue. Wood glue doesn't dry as clear though, and it's harder to apply in tiny amounts. You could use like a little stick to apply small amounts, but to me that's too time consuming, but it does have a better bond. Anyway, my point is you got to be careful, because I can't tell you how many times I've made furniture and was impatient before the glue dried, and then I try to pick it up or do something with it and it just like falls apart. So that is not good. So this is like glued to the metal because I left it there all night. which is actually kind of good because it's going to be nice and bonded, but we'll see. I'm going to use a tool to pry it up. So I'm going to use this guy to, yeah, it's on there pretty good. And this wood, you can see it's like bending. It's because it's thin. Ooh, I hope I didn't, you know, you might, because this had a lot of glue. Ooh, squeaky. You got to be careful because you could bust this whole thing. There we go. Now see how messy that is? I knew that was going to happen when I was gluing this down, but this is the back of the bookshelf, so I don't care. So that's what happens with glue. And if you were to paint over this glue before, like if you didn't do before you glued, your stain would not, it would not get in there and it would look really blotchy and wrong. See, in fact, there's a piece right there where there must have been some little bit of glue. See how that's lighter there? That's because there was some residual glue or something right there when I painted it. That's what will happen. It would be all over it and not look good. So that's my, but look how nice it looks on the front. That's the back of the bookshelf. I went ahead and made that. And what I did was, wait, I'm going to leave this out. So my shelf is 4 inches wide, but it has the slats. It has a frame around it that's 1/16 inch thick. So I had to account for that. And so what I did was I subtracted 2/16, which is 1/8. I know, the math, it's unbelievable. So now that should be, I'm sorry, it's not 4 inches wide, 6 inches wide. Oh yeah, 4 inches wide, duh. See how that's 4 inches wide? Can you see that on the, it's harder to see on this one. Now I'm gonna start working on the frame. Now I'm just doing this the way that I think is easiest given what I observed when I looked at the real life shelf. It's kind of weird how this is put together. All right, I think what I'm gonna do is we're gonna make this to start with. The actual shelves are 12 inches deep. All right, so that's what this is, okay? It's gonna go along here. But the bookshelf itself is 13 inches deep. All right, does that make sense? Because there's this back thing. This back thing is 1/16 of an inch thick. So I need the top of the bookshelf to be 1 foot plus the extra. So it needs to be 13 inches deep. But in miniature, that's going to be literally, I believe this, see how close that is? I think that's actually going to be perfect. So I don't even need to strip any more wood. This is the width I want. And it needs to fit right in there. So I'm going to cut here. I might need to make a bottom one. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but I need to paint this. This might end up looking different because this is a slightly different type of wood. This is balsa wood, which is super soft. It's like a sponge. Okay, let's see how it looks with the paint. This is like one of these projects where I'm like, I'm pretty confident I can do it without like a practice version for you. And I did do some of my chair, so I got some of the concept figured out, but it is kind of a fly by the seat of your pants type of project right now. So bear with me. We're doing it. And I want to get all the wood. Paint it. And it's going to get all over my hands. So this is the top of the bookshelf. And let's get a paper towel. I should have that in a more handy position right now. Okay, I got paint all over myself, but that's all right. You always have like I like to always have a wet paper towel. So this didn't kind of stain quite as nicely as the other type of wood. See that? It's because I think it just is absorbing. But that's okay. That'll work. Okay, so I'm going to just start doing voiceover here because we kind of fucked up the camera angle on this. And I just want to show you, you basically just start piecing this thing together. I didn't have a method other than just looking at the real life shelf and, you know, kind of, like I said, Tetrising it together. But basically it uses so I'm you cut your shelves. These are the actual shelves. But then to hold the shelves up, instead of like hardware, you're using actual little slats of wood. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm cutting all these little pieces of wood that are going to basically, you'll see, I kind of layer them around the edges and then they hold up each shelf. You'll see. But yeah, this part got kind of fucked up, but don't worry. We'll get back to the normal episode in just a moment. And I really do need, as I'm watching this, I'm like, oh, I need to create like a pattern for people to follow because this is chaos. I'm still learning how to do this show. Okay. Just hang in there. Okay. So you can see it kind of like I'm positioning them along the edge like that. It's hard to see, but you'll be able to see better later in the episode how I do this. And then you're going to glue these like that. And yeah, this is really great entertainment, honestly. Like if you're still watching at this point, God bless you. I hope you have an abundant life. Okay, so see how those pieces stick up, and then you put your shelf in. So you're just going to piece it down all the way down. And that's basically where I'm going to pick up in just a moment. And you're going to see how this actually works. Okay, we're back. It's been a couple days. I had to, live life and stuff. Now, and I've also done a little bit more work on the shelf. We're coming along great here, and we're going to finish it up and then make some little books to go on it. So let's just keep it going. Okay. Now, as I started finishing this, I'm noticing like just all these little imperfections, things being slightly not square, but I'm just going to let that go. It overall looks really good. So let's just finish it up. So what I'm going to do is I got to the bottom here, and my pre-cut sizes for this little slat here, not exactly the right width. So all I need to do is just, the easiest way to do this is to line it up in there and then make sure everything is straight, and then draw lines to like what size you want this piece to be. And you can use your miter shears or your X-Acto knife to cut it down to size. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Let's see. And my pencil mark is kind of hard to see, but there it is. Don't cut your finger. That thing is sharp. Cut through bone. I'm dressing for fall, even though it's not fall. It is a little like misty here and overcast, so it's slightly cooler than summer weather. So I'm just like embracing it. I'm so ready for fall. It's my favorite season of the year. I'm not like, don't worry, it's not pumpkin spice for me. Actually do not like that kind of stuff, and I don't drink coffee, so it's really not part of my identity, okay, as a white woman. But I do love fall. I love soups. I love the smell of crisp autumn air. I love the crunching of leaves. I love the sounds in the air. Just everything sounds different in the fall, and I love campfire smell, and I love a hayride. I love that kind of crap, and I'm just ready for it. So I'm just dressing a little warmer because I'm just ready. And I got some clothes at the thrift store that were a little more fall friendly, and so I'm like, I want to wear those now. Okay. Okay, so that piece is in. All right. And now, so see, on this side, I already went ahead and finished the edging. So it's like this, sort of a frame on top of these slats that I just put down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on this side. Now the key is getting it as straight as possible, knowing that you made kind of an imperfect thing here. Let's see, I think I want to do this piece because it's a little darker. and contrasts better. All right, so I've already got this cut, and that looks good to me. And just slather that glue on. Now I have something I'm going to do here to make sure it's nice and flush against all my slats. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. Okay. So I just want to make sure there might be some unevenness at the bottom. We can sand that down all around the edges. I am going to do some sanding here. I'm going to actually place it face down just to even out. Well, I thought I was going to do that. Be careful. Just place it how you think it's going to look good. And then, whoop, 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 whoop. What I'm going to do to secure this, you might want to give it like a hold for a few seconds just to get it right where you want it, and so it doesn't like slide around too much. Okay, now to get all this like nice and as smooth as possible, I'm going to use some little clamps along here just to get all these pieces like nice and flush, so it looks as straight as possible when you're looking straight on. And some glue might bulge out, so you're going to want to come in and clean that up if it's really messy looking. Okay, now I want to just kind of give it a look-see and make sure that it doesn't look weird or make sure it didn't get super crooked when I was doing that and get off track. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I'm just going to clean up some glue. Okay. Is it staying? We'll see if that stays. Okay, now I'm going to set this aside for a few minutes while we work on, I'm actually going to do this, I'm going to do this bottom piece after this is dry, because I just think I'm going to be messing with it too much and things are going to start coming loose and I'm going to get annoyed with my own impatience. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. Now let's like work on making some miniature books. Okay, so we're going to make some tiny books to put on the bookshelf. Now there's different ways to do it. You can do it the very fancy way and make an actual little book with pages. I mean, you're going to take this to the next level. You're going to do it this way. Now, I bought these. Making it look as perfect as this is challenging. And so that's like the fancy way, okay? That would be good if you were like going to have a book like out in the scene in a room, like, and you want it to have that real look, or you're going to give it to somebody as a miniature book. But if you're just lining a bookshelf that's not going to really be messed with very much, and it's just more for the visual to make it look like it's full, there's a faster way, which is to glue a book cover onto a little piece of wood. And that is much more simple. This is one I made. And you can do it with variety sizes, you know, and I'll show you how to do both. So first, you're going to use the easy way. Wait, let's actually do the hard way first. The hard way is to actually put some pages in there. And what I recommend is using a paper cutter to cut some strips the same width. Okay, and then cutting these down. You can still use the paper cutter to cut the squares down if you want to go through all the trouble of like measuring and making sure each page is this. The point of this is you're going to try to get your little pages to be as close to the same exact size as possible. I'm going to just do a very fly by the seat of your pants measuring. And you're just trying to get a little stack of papers that are as close in size as possible. Okay. And you can make it as thick or thin as you want. Let's do one more cut. Okay. And then you're going to get all your little pages together. Now I have actually tried to make a miniature of my own memoir and like tried to print out the actual pages in miniature, and it turned out okay. I learned a lot. I would probably try it again now. Let's see. This is a thick book. Okay. So what you're going to do now, you can see your pages are not exactly lined up because you did not cut them perfectly. And that's all right. But what you're going to do is get them kind of loose, like a deck of cards. You're going to drop them and let them get lined up on one edge as smooth as you can. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an initial little binding glue, which is just my craft glue. Get a blob of it on a piece of cardboard or something, and I'm just going to like run it through while keeping my grip pretty strong on this, because I want them to stay lined up on this one edge. This is your binding right here. This is the binding side, okay? Bound side of the book. And then what we're going to do is create basically a little miniature book press using 2 pieces of wood that you have around. I have some already cut because I was going to use these to actually make the books. So take 2 pieces of wood, again, holding tight on your edge so that it doesn't come loose, although it will have already started to stick a little. And you're going to want to line that up. Doesn't have to be perfect, but this is to give it pressure so it dries. It doesn't even need to be super square, but I just am being perfectionist. So, and you're going to take a clamp and clamp it down. Now you could go a little extra here and take a little paintbrush, dip it in some glue, and get in there and like just give it an extra little brush of glue so that you can get down in those little crannies. Okay, so that is that, and we're gonna let that dry for a minute. I've already done one here. Let's see how it turned out. Now some of your pages might come loose because they got stuck to the wood. That's all right. So let's see how this. Now it might not be perfectly glued together, so don't be, pulling on it too much at this point. And now it depends on how you want your cover to be. If you want it to be flush like these are, like a paperback is, you're going to go ahead and put your cover on the book. All right. So here's what you can use for covers. There's a couple of options. Let's say you're doing wood or paper. To cover your books, you can use whatever paper you have around, plain cardstock. You can use my cute index cards, which are for sale in my Etsy shop, which will give you a nice variety of patterns to choose from. Let's say you wanted to have it look like it's a hardback, where it has that kind of edge of the book jacket sticking out. So what I do is I just take the paper I'm going to use to cover it, and I fold it over my book. So in this case, it's a piece of wood. And I'm going to give it a rough cut because I want my edge of the book cover to not be totally the same. I want it to be just a slightly bigger than the piece of wood. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this on. I'm going to put glue on the wood first. And if your wood isn't totally square and you're doing it this method, that's fine, because you're kind of covering it with the book jacket. So, and then I'm gonna just get that on there. The more I mess with it, the worse it looks. So let me just get the glue off my fingers. That's helpful when you're doing this. Get the glue off your fingers before you start doing the detail work, because all those little flakes of glue are gonna get all over your book. And if you don't want it to look messy, I mean, this looks like a little worn. Okay, so I can see it's just a little bit I'm just going to give it just the tiniest trim. Close enough. So there's one book. You could draw on this and put a little title if you wanted. One of the most fun ways to do this is to actually make a miniature of a real book. Now, my idea for this bookshelf was, what if? And whenever I say what if, you know some crazy shit's going to follow that's going to dominate my life for weeks on end. And I'm going to set aside all the important other tasks I need to do, and paying bills and taking care of my home and all that to do this what if. What if this bookshelf was mostly populated by books that Republicans are trying to ban because they're scared of them. And I started working on that, and I got about, and there's hundreds of them, thousands of books that they don't like. I got about 12 books deep, and it was taking a long time to make these miniature book jackets. My methods, because it's not like you can just Google book jacket and it like laid out online and then you can shrink it down. It's not out there. So you got to find the book jacket, and then you got to Google book spine, and then you got to Google the back cover of the book. I mean, this is if you're going really, realistic looking. And then you have to look up the exact size of the book and then divide that by 12 and add up the width. It was a whole thing. And then you got to cut these out as neatly as possible. I'm going to use my Cricut machine because it is so much faster and more exact to do a large amount of small little cuts like this. I am thinking about continuing creating these little miniature band books, but we'll see how far I get with it as life takes over. But for now, we're just going to do 12. So let's get that nice. If you're interested in the Cricut machine, I would say look on Facebook Marketplace, because I think it's one of those machines that like people go, oh my God, I want one of those. And then they never use it. Kind of like a stand mixer or an appliance or a kind of a pricier item that you're like, oh my God, I really want that. And then you get it and you never use it. Sort of like a treadmill. I think the Cricut machine falls in that category. So before buying one new, I would say look on Facebook Marketplace, because there's probably people trying to unload theirs because they're like, I never use this. I should try to sell it. And you can probably get it way cheaper. But do research if you really want one. I use mine all the time. It has paid for itself. But, if you're not someone who crafts a lot and you don't do the type of crafting that this would help with, it's a splurge for sure. And it's kind of like, it's not gigantic, but it does take up some real estate. Especially when you're using it, you do have to have some space behind it. Anyway, so if you're going to do wood, I already cut some pieces of wood, due to a variety of sizes and thicknesses. You can even double up, like if you want to make a really thick book. And then just start making little books. This is one of those meditative activities, because like once you get your method down of how you want to make your little mini books, you can just sit in front of the TV, watch something, listen to a podcast, and just make a bunch of these. And it's pretty satisfying experience as you start building your collection. It's like, ooh, got some variety going here. All right, I'll show you how the Cricut turned out. Whee! So satisfying. So I've got the 1619 project. All Boys Aren't Blue. The Handmaid's Tale. Gee, why do they want to ban that? Sold. Because they're like, spoiler alert, that's what we're doing. Don't give away the ending of what we're trying to do with this country. We got the color purple. Something called Crank. Perks of Being a Wildflower. Crank is by this woman, L something. It's so small, I forgot. I guess she does a series of young adult books that adults think it's inappropriate. It must have sex or something in it. I don't know. Water for Elephants. 15 Reasons Why. 13 Reasons Why. a book called Genderqueer. Now, why would they want to ban that? Kite Runner. I was surprised a lot of the books on the list, I was like, I read in high school. The Color Purple. Why? I mean, I guess there's like some really dark shit in there that happens. We'll do, let's see how this turned out. Ooh, let's take this off the little book press that it's okay if some of the pages like stuck to the wood, but just try to get as much off as you can. Okay, so now, all right, 1619 project. I'm going to take the pages, I'm going to take the side I glued down and just fit it in here. This is the side. Just always be mindful of the side that was glued together with your binding technique. And I'm just going to spread that out so that it's not too goopy. And make sure, this is what I've learned with these tiny, when you print out on a laser printer or even ink, when you have gluey hands and you overhandle paper that's printed on, those little white creases start to show, and it starts to make it look like it's not miniature. And it starts to really mess up the look. So just have clean hands, as clean as possible when you're doing this. Okay. And if you start to notice a lot of white coming through because you bent the paper, that's okay, because books do have creases. That's fine. But you can also take like a pen later and try to fill that in a little bit, or colored pencil, so that it looks smooth. That's a trick I've learned. There's different ways to get this down to being more perfect, but you don't want to mess up your cover. So you could take an X-Acto knife. Take an X-Acto knife and cut. See how you can get like really close and make it really even? So do that. I think you could actually even lightly sand it. But again, be careful that you don't damage your cover. Okay. I'm not going to do this for every book. I'm just curious like how good I can make it look. That is looking pretty good. Pretty even. But look, now you can open it. It's not, you know, it'll come apart if you play with it too much, but now if you were to sit that like, you know, in a scene, a miniature scene, it looks more real. And if you don't want it to open too much, because then the scale starts to look off. But that looks fantastic. Okay, so that's the 1619 project. What are you afraid of? It's just a little book. Anyway. All right, so we're adding that to the pile. And you know, when you do real books, you can see the real ones just look visually more real because they have all the stuff on the spine and stuff. And so people do sell like miniature PDFs you can print out of a bunch of different books that, you know, so definitely look those up. I will try to keep working on these and actually make more of these banned books. I would love to have a huge PDF of a bunch of banned books, mini banned books that you can print and make your own. I don't know if there's a copyright issue with doing miniatures of books that exist. It probably is, because, you know, we live in hell and corporations would do anything to make money. And I understand authors deserve, you know, but these books these are bestsellers. Okay. Like I don't know if I'm hurting anyone by selling a download for $1.99 of banned books. I feel like it's for a good cause, maybe. So see, you just add in your wood. You could also, let's see, I'm going to just trim that ever so slightly. If you wanted to, you could also like paint the wood white to make the pages look white if you want them to look white and newer. But you could also keep them brown to look older, because pages get discolored over time. But that looks really, really good. I love that. So I'm just gonna like go to town on making some mini books. So I took my dad to see the Naked Gun, the new Naked Gun. It was so funny. I had such a good time. And like I mentioned, Pamela Anderson, Liam Neeson, great chemistry. I just love them. And so we had a great time. But when we get there, it's one of those movie theaters now. Every seat is a recliner. You know, they're trying to make it like an experience because people don't go to see movies the way they used to. They want to make, they want to entice you to come. They want to make it comfy. You get to reserve your seats in advance, those types of things. So we got our seats in advance and they were reserved, and we show up and we actually went into the wrong movie theater first. We did get there in plenty of time, but then we realized we were in the wrong movie theater. So we moved to the correct one, and we come in, it's the movie, the trailers are about to start, so we still have about 45 minutes before the movie starts. But we come in, we got all our snacks and drinks and stuff. Look at the color purple. Look how cute that turned out. Oh my God. Wow. One of my favorite books of all time. I've read it like 3 times. Alice Walker. Love this book. Looking so cute. Let's actually check on the bookshelf. I just realized before I finish this story about the movie theater. I'll just finish it now because I don't want to be too disjointed here. So we walk in and there's people sitting in our seats, these 2 ladies. And they go, "Oh, are these your seats?" And these are like good seats. I bought the tickets in advance, far in advance. And they're exactly what my dad needs. My dad has Parkinson's. He's recently injured. He uses, walking stick, but he can't use his right arm. And he also, needs to use the bathroom, potentially needs to use the bathroom during the movie. And so I had picked a specific spot for us to sit. That was also a good seat for all of us to sit. So it was like the lowest row. That was, the first row up and closest to where you go to the bathroom, the exit. And I come in and they're like, "Oh, are these your seats?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, can you find somewhere else to sit?" And she points like up to the back of the theater because that's all that's left. And I'm like, and I went, "Well, my dad," and I like show him, I'm like, "But we had to sit here specifically for him." And they were like, "Oh, okay." I'm sorry. When she just went, and she didn't even start to get up. She just sat there and she goes, "Well, can you find somewhere else to sit?" No, that's the whole point. Why didn't you reserve your tickets? Anyway, I just thought that was weird. It wasn't a big deal, but I was like, I would never say that. I'd be like, "Oh, they knew they were sitting in seats, and I think she thought, maybe she didn't see my dad and she thought I was like this young person and maybe I was just like going to let the old lady stay, and maybe I would have, but they weren't that old. I mean, like maybe in their early 60s, late 50s. I mean, come on. They were sprightly. And then at one point during the movie, I looked down and I see where they're sitting. By the way, they're sitting in like the handicap spots. And I'm like, of course that's where you go. Whatever. So they're sitting there. I mean, nobody needed them. I'm sure they would have gotten up before going, "Can you find somewhere else to sit?" And I look down and she's got her shoes off and her socks. She's got her bare feet up in the air on the recliner. So yeah. At that point I went, you know what? I'm in the right. Whatever that happened. Anyway, I'm trimming this piece of wood to fit perfectly right in here. But anyway, the movie overall was an amazing experience. I hadn't been to the movies in a while, and it was a fun movie theater in Richmond. It newly renovated. Like, you make an event of it. It's snacks. It's and of course it wouldn't be Movies with My Dad without my dad being like, oh, like how expensive the concessions are. And it's like, but that's part of it. If you don't know now that they rip you off on the concessions, then you have not been alive for the past 70 years. I might actually put my jig, use my jig to help me out here. To gently apply pressure on this edge right here. And you can do that a couple different ways. You can use one of these and then not just, yeah. And I'm just gonna let that dry for a minute while we still make some books. You can also like just find little bits of paper you have around, like little labels and things on products, and like just put it on something. If it looks like it could look like a little book cover, use it. Okay, so I only have 2 more little pieces to add. That's these 2 little like end cap pieces. All right, so to finalize my shelf, we're going to quickly, now I could just set this up as it is and it looks pretty damn good. So what I'm gonna do to actually try to neaten this up a little is I'm gonna try to sand these down a little and just to get this surface even. But that might take off some of the paint that I had put on. I can touch that up. It's not a big deal. Even that out a little. Yeah. Looking good. Okay, so that really just cleans it up. And then I'm gonna just use a paintbrush to get the, clean that up. Dry paintbrush. First, I'm gonna touch up with some brown paint these places that I just sanded off very carefully. Let's hope I can do it without it really looking too dark. But use the wet paintbrush method. You don't want every piece, but just, I'm going to do this edge just to get it back to its former glory. Now the final step is to hit this with some Mod Podge. I'm going to hit it with some satin Mod Podge just to give it that like furniture stained, nice, little bit of sheen to it. But you want to just go on thin. If you go too thick or too thin or too thick, there's a nice balance, and it's like something that you just learn after doing this for a while, what looks right. So I'm going to do the top first just to, so you don't want to go too thin, but also you want to get all the way across with one. And I kind of go, I hold the brush at an angle to just draw that Mod Podge across. It's similar to how you do stain or polyurethane on a wood piece, because you want it to look smooth and not like a ton of different brush strokes like blotchy in there. Okay. And get your edges, but look and make sure you didn't create a big blotchy mess on top when you get these edges. All right, so I wanted to show you. So this is my room, and here is where I'm gonna put the bookshelf, about there. And let's just like pick these up and just see how it looks on one shelf. That is so freaking good. Like, I just want you to understand, like, I've done bookshelves before, but when you make your own books and they look real, like these little ones, it makes such a difference in how real it looks. But that's how it's going to look. You can totally make something like this. This would be a great gift idea for a librarian or anyone that likes books in your life. Make them a tiny bookshelf with like their favorite books and or subversive books that they don't want us to read. And the camera got messed up again. Anyway, that's this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.